Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. We have a very interesting episode of Chris Harrison's podcast, Most Dramatic Podcast with Chris Harrison Ever. And let me tell you something. Jason Tartick delivers. It's one of the first times we've heard him talk about his breakup with Kaitlyn Bristowe. You know, they've done a very good job of keeping it cordial. And the question is, for how long? And it looks like they'll continue to keep it cordial. He talks about getting worried of the repercussions of maybe sharing his side. So it could be that he or she feels bitterness towards the other. Either way, right now they're doing a great job post-breakup. And we discuss how Jason ran into Kaitlyn Bristowe and also what it felt like to go from friends, that met on her show Off the Vine to dating, and then of course reuniting at Chris Harrison's wedding. So I'm gonna just play a bunch of clips for y'all out there. There really isn't too much else I can do. If you want to check out the whole episode, it's called The Most Dramatic Podcast Ever with Chris Harrison. Let's just jump to the 20-minute mark. Here's Jason Tartick explaining to Chris how he first met Kaitlyn after being a guest on her podcast, which again happened right after she broke up with Booth. What's the guy's name? Sean Booth. I was going to say Jason Booth. Okay, here it is.
That's where the sparks flew.
Okay, I actually didn't know that.
For me, at least. I don't think for her. I remember when I first hugged her, I was like, oh,
That's interesting. I didn't know that story. I didn't know where you guys actually started dating or whatever. So it was on the.
Well, we didn't know. She interviewed me on the show. I remember the sparks flew when I remember giving her a hug, and there's just a lot of banter, and she reminded me a lot of like people back home, and I was like, oh, this girl's awesome. Then a friendship established. She put me in the friend zone for a little bit, and then we dated shortly thereafter, a few months or so.
I really appreciate. So here's what's interesting about the two of you. Obviously, I've been involved or, somewhat in touch or connected to 100 breakups on the show because, I'm either friends with or have worked with someone in that relationship. I was thinking about this earlier before you and I came on today. I've never been so intertwined with a relationship and a breakup as I have been with you and Kaitlyn, because I guess I've never been as close with both people and consider both of you friends, still talk to both of you, invited both of you to our wedding. You guys both graciously showed up at our wedding.
So this is going to be the story about how they showed up at the wedding and saw each other for the first time. You know what was interesting? I actually interviewed Kaitlyn Bristowe on Driving with Dave right before the wedding, right before the weekend, or relatively right before, and she was just kind of coming to terms with the fact she was going to have to she was going to have to not just run into Jason Tartick, but she knew there was going to be a conversation to be had.
Confines of this house. See each other, talk, let the weirdness kind of leave the room. So then when we all get together on Saturday for the wedding, we're ready to go. And obviously one of the awkward moments was going to be you and Kaitlyn. And I was thinking to myself, I'm glad they're both here. I'm grateful and it's going to be fine. But yeah, there's going to be that moment when they first see each other. But you guys actually saw each other at the hotel before you came here. Just total happenstance that they walked into the bar you were sitting at, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of irony and like the universe works in weird ways. You guys gave us 3 hotel rooms to stay at.
Yeah.
Okay. I had booked a room for Kaitlyn and I the minute we got the original invite, which was quite some time ago.
When y'all were still together.
So we had talked about like, hey, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to take it or I'll take it? And so she was like, I'll stay with Trista. I was like, okay, I'll take it. So I that room was at the Omni. But we could have booked at 3 hotels. And Wells and I was like, all right, Wells, where are you going to be? Let's meet up. Ben, where are you going to be? Bob, where are you going to be? We're all really good friends. And they're all at the other hotel. I was like, okay. So I was at this hotel by myself. So I'm getting ready. I'm like, I'll have a drink before Chris's party. And I go down to the bar. I look to my left and I see 3 very good looking women like get up and walk down. And I'm like, who was that? It's like, okay. I couldn't tell. But then I went, it's funny. I kind of did a circle and I sat down and then I did another look and I was like, oh shit, that's Kaitlyn and some of the others. And I was like, what do I do here? And Kaitlyn broke the ice. She texted me and goes, "Hey, can you tell the bartender to hurry up? Like we put the order in 20 minutes ago." I was like, "I thought that was you, but I didn't have time to say hello because you guys ran so quickly."
They sprinted out of the bar.
Sprinted. I was like, "What are we doing here?"
You know we're going to be together in 30 minutes.
I'm like, "What?"
Did y'all share a car over here or no?
I offered that. I said, "Okay, now that we broke the ice, I'm going to get an Uber XL. If anybody in your group wants to come, come on, join." And they were like, "Oh, we're good. We actually already ordered the Uber." So I came solo and I was the first one. I was 25 minutes late.
Here's what I appreciate. I mean, I would say you were on time.
Okay, good.
That's fashionably late, 20, 25 minutes. The funny thing is, Lauren and I were sitting here and, the
all right, so then they discuss the fact that they showed up late, but I really want to get into this next episode here. We got a lot to air out, so they ran this episode 2 parts. The first part, of course, talks about Jason Tartick, the reuniting, but what's the really interesting part is not necessarily the reuniting, but their actual how the breakup happened. It's going to be heavy. I'm going to play this in its entirety. Not the full podcast, but I'm not going to break up the silent moments, and you're just going to hear the pain in Jason's voice. Now, we also know when Jason and Kaitlyn are different in the sense, I think he has a harder time talking about it. And she, in the podcast I've watched of her discussing her breakup, sort of compartmentalizes and knows to steer away from the topic because she did then break down as well. So they've both cried over this. And I say that because, people are always trying to say, who's affected more by the breakup, which is just such a rubbish take. They were in love. It didn't work out. They never had a real scandalous moment. It just, sometimes things just don't work out.
When she broke up, did you say, "Oh, okay, like, I get it. I saw this coming"?
Kaitlyn meant so much to me and still currently does. And it's such I get so worried that like, I want to preface this. Like, so when people are hearing this, if they think I'm like skating or surfacing, I just get so worried about the repercussions of what I say.
Yeah.
And I care still so much for her. And it's really, really hard for me to have these conversations. So I'll do my best. To answer the question though, I felt like it was on the horizon.
It's breaking down. Wow. It's the way Chris Harrison's good at what he does. He doesn't interject. He lets Jason air it out. I'll interject. It's dead air, but
Was it?
Fresh wounds, folks.
You haven't even asked a good question. It was a tough time.
Yeah.
So to go back to it, it's tough. I'm also bad at that. I've worked on it. I've always been someone, I hate showing my emotion. I hate it. I remember at The Bachelor, people would be like, I remember someone was like, "He's trying to force tears." I'm like, no, I'm trying to hide every tear. And then when the camera's off, I'm going to go nuts and cry. I'm trying to get better at it.
I felt like that at my wedding. I read my vows 50 times thinking I won't break down. And of course I did. I cried like a baby.
So, but yeah, I am
no, it's
very sensitive these days, especially this topic, but
you loved her
so much.
And so clearly the emotions still run deep and naturally.
Yeah. Fuck. So yeah, I saw, give me a second.
We need another tequila shot.
Give me a second. I'll get it together here.
Not easy.
I saw it. Yeah. It was the way I would say is there was a lot of deteriorating complacency.
Wow.
Fuck.
Deteriorating complacency.
So that's my answer. So yeah, I did, but no, there was definitely no sweeping. There was no shock.
Yeah.
I think in general, my stance is, I just didn't want to believe it.
Denial.
Right. And I think that's something that I need to, that the takeaway for me is that,
which by the way, if Kaitlyn dumped him, which I think we can all agree is probably what happened, you can understand how Denial would have led her to come to the decision first. Like, it's not working out, whatever. And it could have been his fault. There's blame on all sides is my point. It could have been he wanted this wedding and she, but also, a lot of times with like wedding planning, you want something, but also you're not necessarily good at doing all the work to make that happen. And as they kind of didn't get that, and you wonder, like, would they have been able to walk down the aisle if they had prioritized that 2 years ago? Could they have had a different outcome? Maybe. It's just one of those you never know. But in this reality we live in right here, he said it was deteriorating complacency. They both talked about prioritizing their businesses, and that's the reality they lived in, and the flame went out. Could it come back? Maybe, but I would say low belief that would happen.
If you run from problems or hide or bury or don't address them, eventually it's going to catch up, and you got to step into hard times.
The proverbial kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
And you either do the work now or you do twice as much work later. Or I guess feel the repercussions of it.
God. What is wrong? Yeah.
Let's just see if he says anything else.
I'm good.
Well,
bring me back.
And
Gotta get that out. Name it to drain it is what I'm told. So I'm good now. It was just a hard time, so to go back to it's tough.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I go back and talk about, my own divorce or own what, it's like those things are still at the surface.
I think I've also put so much work in trying to understand emotions, because for so long I've buried emotions. And now that I get it, it's like a floodgate in my life.
Yeah.
Because for so long I just masked it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's not a healthy thing to do, man. I've cried more in
6 months than I've cried my entire life. But that's with all things. Like I feel good about it too, because I could finally name emotions and understand them.
Well, there it is, folks. And you can go listen to the full episode. Chris Harrison loved the fact that he got Jason's tears, just absorbing that power the way Chris Harrison does. But at the same time, he can relate. He's been, on a lot of different angles of the show. He's been a villain, he's been a host, he's been divorced, and he's back in love with somebody else. So he's also felt a lot of these emotions that the contestants go through. And Jason says, he's cried more in the last 6 months. It's like, listen, buddy, if you don't cry those emotions out, if you don't sweat that feeling out and address it and feel it, it's going to turn into a sickness and it's not going to go away. There's only one way to get it away, and that's to shine light on it, to address it, to move forward. It looks like he's doing just that. Are we? Remember that for 2024. Are we addressing the skeletons in our closet, the dirt underneath the rug, or all the different aspects of our life that we could make better? And maybe. And, let's challenge ourselves to continue to do that. All right, I'll be live right after this if you're watching this on Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Neal. Don't forget, we didn't mention this yet, but we've got the toy drive today, 7:30 p.m. East Coast, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. If you watch tonight's live stream and participate in the live stream, the only ask I'm asking everybody who joins us is to just donate a gift. There's $5 gifts, $3, $10 gifts. If you could donate a gift, and hey, maybe you'll donate 2 gifts, one for you and one for somebody else who's watching, and it'll help for all the single moms out there as we try to get some Christmas gifts under the tree for their kids this Christmas season. Not a bad thing to do with our audience, huh, folks? All right, we'll be back with more right after this.